Yeah, well, you're nice and one.
Are you good for Mike still?
Oh, that's right. Hi.
The best
What's
one.
her?
Oh, no.
Graf.
No,
Well, I didn't have two
Say her
sisters, so I need
camera.
to be a best sister.
There you go.
Nice
Oh,
job.
you don't need it anyway.
But that's how she's sharing the.
And then all three of us.
She's still sharing it.
Or
You can still see it.
the other sister's not as
Okay, let
good.
me-
You can just mute her mic until you're ready.
Okay, so what's in the red is.
See something in the calendar. What?
Can you hear us?
Can anybody hear us? Testing, testing, testing.
Yes, today we are live from Clark's Family Kitchen and we're doing a presentation. You want me to project a little bit more? Okay, got it. Okay. He wants you to say something.
Testing, testing. Okay.
Okay. All right, cool.
Don't do that.
Is that the one? Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's bad. It's good. We're clean. Imagine that. 5 minutes to go.
All right, how do we know how many people are on? Because right now it says only 3. I don't see Sarah or anything.
5 minutes.
I'm not seeing Sarah on.
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
It is recording.
Yes, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Really? Wow, so listen,
Oh, there's one down here.
I'm leaving the bill. I'm leaving it.
Is Dan managing the chat for you?
Yeah.
I think so. Okay, you can be my second set of eyes.
I was just gonna say, make sure.
I need this.
I actually really do have to.
I got it. And that's why it's not making trouble.
Yes.
How are you? Good.
I want to say.
At 5:15.
Yeah, I start 5:15. If I don't have it else before 5 o'clock, we get it because they said it goes. So I don't know how long this is gonna run, but
No, that's part of it.
55-ish.
Which is that camera for when we talk?
Yeah.
So I will turn this way.
But once your presentation starts, I'm going to. Yes.
How to make your screen bigger so they can watch you talk.
Mm-mm.
It's just gonna stay in camera.
Ah,
It's gonna be easy.
We're waiting for the other galaxies to come into orbit. Well, it's sold out until it rains and it's 60 degrees. This is Trilogy after all. Mhm.
So.
My cats are parked right in front of it.
I'm already cringing. I'm just like.
There's plenty of material. Yeah.
This, I think that's gonna be me next week.
Your kids would love it.
David, let me do that.
No, they'll have to go on leave. There we are.
You know. Some rest tattoos.
Okay.
Places.
Thanks to both of you for being with
All right, folks. Well, welcome to our special generations talk today. So we have our very own Marianne Graf, who's going to be presenting, and we have our live audience. And thank you guys for tuning in, because this is actually our very first national live stream coming out of Twin Mills Club. So you get to be the trailblazer with that. So I'm super stoked about this. I know we've been doing a lot of planning leading up to this day, so I'm really excited about this. So take it away, Miss Marianne.
Thank you. This is really fun for me. When I do these talks, I aim them at the audience. So this is aimed at 55 and up, which I tell people is usually an average age of about 70. Laugh. And it's aimed at exactly where we are. November 14th, week and a half after the election. I promised Dan I wouldn't start a riot. So we're going to stay right down the middle today. But I think you'll find this is pretty pertinent to everything that's going on. At the end of this, we'll get questions. So I'm going to get started. We've got a lot of material. And the focus will be the holidays, surviving the holidays. But I think you'll find other material in here as well in our first oddity. So there is some fine print for those of you that are interested in fine print. After this is over, if you want a PDF of the presentation, just email me at info@teamhci.com and we'll get that for you. All right, so massive post-pandemic economic instability. Wars shattering America's optimism about the future. Younger generations in rebellion against an older generation that they think looks committed to an orgy of greed and speculation. Deep cultural conflicts, pitting urban societies against rural. Major cultural battlefields on immigration, race, gender, politics, military involvement, overseas drugs, sexual, and first call for Kelly. Would be the last. Thank you. Yeah. All of that was last century. And we made it through that too. So that's where I would invite you to sit back, take a deep breath, say, we're going to live through it this time and learn a little bit about how we got to be here. So when I talk about generations, the Bible for me is a book by William Strauss and Neil Howe. They wrote this back in the 80s and predicted everything that we're seeing today based on looking back six generations in Anglo-American history. And so they followed the trends, what happened, what events happened, and what people's reactions to them were. And they classified those reactions by the type of person that was involved at that time. Neil Howe, by the way, uses this now for economic forecasting. And he's pretty darn good at it. So one of the premises about this is that for everything that's going on, there are always the right people in the right time to be dealing with it. So you start with turnings. Now, the marketers that have grabbed onto this don't start with turnings at all. They just start with, I want to name a new generation and be the first to say it's here. But it actually starts with what are called turnings. So turnings are the same 4 cycles that repeat every 80 to 100 years since at least the mid-1500s. That's why their book said they were going to predict U.S. history through 2069. So each of these turnings is about 20 to 25 years. They each have a very identifiable social mood, a social reaction to what's going on. And those turnings create generations. So the generations actually are a result of the turnings. And it's people born, a generation is people born about the same time, shaped by shared events and experiences of that turning during their formative years. And with social generations, which is what we're talking about, the formative years for them actually are about from age 16 to, it used to be 21 when they reached adulthood. Now adulthood is reached sometime in your early 50s. That's at least through the mid-20s, these formative years. And that leads to the shared reactions lead to beliefs and values that often become unconscious defaults. And that's something I'd like to invite all of you to look at, is what kind of unconscious defaults we all have because of those years that we went through. So social generations, we know from research, very sophisticated research, that social generations influence personality, values, attitudes, and behaviors even more than families do. And part of that's because if you're a kid, you're busy rejecting your parents, right? And so these external influences tend to shape you more. And so these are the 4 turnings that they identified after looking at these centuries of Anglo-American history. The first one that they talk about is what's called a high, and it's an upbeat era of strong community and social institutions and weakened individualism. And it's when a new civic order implants and old values and regimes decay. And society has, during a high, society has a clear sense about the direction where people are going. And there's active participation in that, active buy-in. The second turning they talk about is awakening. And that's a very passionate era of spiritual upheaval when social, community, and civic order comes under attack in the name of personal and spiritual autonomy. And remember, in the time before that, there was very little individualism, more society, structure, and controls. The third one's called unraveling. And that's a downcast era of strengthening individualism. So now we've gone from highly structured, less structured, to more individualism. And it's weakened institutions and distrust of institutions show up during that era. Old civic order decays, and it's an era of self-interest and self-sufficiency. And then we get to the 4th turning, which is the crisis turning, and that's the era of civic deconstruction. It's essential to rejuvenate. Now, those of you who are in business, this should be sounding familiar. These are just like business cycles, the same thing. You either reinvent and rejuvenate, or it doesn't work out. So that's what this is. After all of these changes, that's what shows up. It's also, because of that, it's political and economic upheaval, sometimes war. It's institutional life is destroyed at this point in response to a perceived threat to the nation's survival. And the need for community reemerges although that's not always the way people would talk about it. So where are we now? I'm sure you're not surprised. Sounds familiar, yes? Yeah, and remember, these descriptions were the result of 5 centuries of research, and the descriptions were written in the 90s. Okay, so I've got the times of the latest highs here. So the last US high was after World War II, when many of us were born and came of age. The awakening was 1963 to about 1985. Unraveling started about mid-80s. And now we've been in this crisis era since 2001 or 2008, pick your poison. And that's where we are right now. So, fourth turnings. They are called by many great gates in history. And so back in 1997, when Strauss and Howe wrote their second or third book, they said then that sometime before 2025, America will pass through a great gate in history, commensurate with the American Revolution, Civil War, and the twin emergencies of the Great Depression and World War II. The risk of catastrophe will be very high. The nation could erupt. They wrote this in 1997. The nation could erupt into civil insurrection or civil violence. It could break up geographically based on what they'd seen for the prior 5 centuries, or succumb to authoritarian rule. Institutional life is destroyed as we know it. Remember, this is necessary for rejuvenation. So you just keep saying to yourself, this is necessary. This is good. So, and it's rebuilt in response to a perceived threat to the nation's survival. So distress drivers, they said in 1997, can be economic, social, civic, environmental, political, institution, military, and or technological. Is there anything there we didn't check? I think we got it all. Yeah. So fourth turnings,
Weather.
climate. Yeah. Oh, no, I don't see a bit. It's in there. Yep. So fourth turning, shake a society to its roots. Yeah. Transform institutions, redirect social purpose, and mark people and generations for life. This is what fourth turnings go through. So you think about it, this is where we are. So each fourth turning proceeds at its own pace, does its own thing, and it depends on events, the country's reactions, and the leaders we choose. And again, it can end badly, well, or some combination. We determine how it ends. Not somebody on the East Coast, the Upper East Coast. We determine how it ends. So the first thing that happens is a crisis that creates a sudden shift in mood. 9/11, 2008, recession, and the pandemic, all of those. It was sudden shift in mood overnight, unexpected. The next thing that happens is large blocks of society coalesce behind a strong leader to tear down the existing social, economic, and cultural order and regenerate. Replace it with something different, which can be better or worse. Historically, that occurred within 4 years of the catalyst. Let's see, the pandemic was when?
2020.
Thank you. And so then the next step is a climax. And in US history, these are the climaxes we have had. Now, I've spent the last 2 years going, I'm not going to listen to this nonsense about war. But I have to admit, when you're sitting in the middle of it, it's hard to keep saying that. So it's up to us, though. Remember, that's the default. When people were throwing catapults, war was their only default. So we get to decide whether or not that's what's going to happen. Stay tuned in is what I would advise. So it's up to us to get out of it without that. And once we do go over the peak, which we are not over yet, there's exhaustion. I bet many of you already, you're exhausted. So exhaustion, and then the relief of resolution. And then we get another batch of boomers to start the whole thing all over again. Okay, so let's talk about these right people at the right time. These are the generations. Who are they? So what's a little bit about generations theory, because the marketers, and admittedly I do marketing, but the marketers have tried to take it over and it's not quite what it is. So each generation has its own unique set of norms and attitudes and behaviors. Each generation lasts about 21 years. Some are 25 or 26, some are 18, but 21 is about the average. They are fluid timeframes. You know, probably most of you know, most of you heard the boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. Well, guess what? It wasn't like on July 1st or January 1st, you were not a boomer anymore. So these are very fluid. They overlap. It's a cycle that we go through. It's not something that's concrete. And we're all still individuals with different cultures and different reactions and experiences. In fact, when you look at it, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are exactly the same era. Now, it's a different expression of it, but it's the same era. So it's not a marketing gimmick that pushes advanced knowledge of a generation so somebody can sell to those behaviors. It's not a way to bully or stereotype. Please don't use that. We've all used it. Please don't. That's not what it's about. Not fixed characteristics. People do change over time. And it's also not ageism. I've done several presentations for a big health system in the West. And one of the things they were concerned about is that it's ageism. Boomers were boomers when they were 25, and you're a boomer now. So it's the characteristics that come from what you experienced. Okay, so the turnings, by the way, do seem worldwide. The original research was Anglo-American, but the turnings do seem to be there. If you look at what's going on in Russia or China or just about any place, they're going through the same chaos. And the experiences and how people see it and what their moral beliefs are vary, but the turnings are there. And one of the examples I use in the United States of how different cultures experience the turnings differently. I think probably most of you have seen Rosie the Riveter. And, you know, she was a symbol of patriotism, women filling in for men who were at war. First time that U.S. women had ever been worked out of the home in any great numbers. And it was patriotic to do that. And it ushered in an era of just huge new opportunities for women that hadn't been there before. At the same time, one of my favorite stories is the 688 Battalion. Have you heard of them? So the 688 was an all-Black female postal battalion stationed in the European War Theater for the worst part of World War II, because nobody could get the mail handled. So they got this battalion, put them together, and sent them over. They processed all the mail for millions of service members, including my great uncle, who will be 104 in March, and was a prisoner of war. He got mail because of these women. He had never heard of them. They were not recognized publicly until 2021. And then they were recognized publicly. They got to go home to maid jobs. So very same time period, same country, very different experience out of those years. That will be true of any culture. It's always going to be a different experience. So speaking of different experiences, election 2024, a lot of people think is just the continuing battle of the boomers. And there's probably some good reasons for that. So the persona, we'll talk about that later, but the generational persona or identity of boomers is activists and that we're very moralistic. It's different from moral, right? Moralistic is when you know about your morals, and they are different from others. So in the 60s and 70s, boomers kind of split into two groups. There were those who were liberated, war protests, civil and women's rights, drug experimentation, and there were those who were appalled by the liberation. And so today it kind of looks to many people like that's boomers just doubling down on the same values, attitudes. Those are unconscious defaults. You know, we developed them when we were in our early 20s, but those defaults are still there. So it's the moralistic taken to extremes on both sides, judgments and activism about the values and behaviors of others. It's not a big deal. It's just part of what's out there in the air. So generational personas, these were also called archetypes, but when I say archetypes, everybody looks at me blankly. So a persona is a summary personality of a group of people with similar experiences, values, and attitudes. So these are the 4 generational personas we get out of these turnings. And you see idealists there, and idealists are heavy on vision and values and very moralistic. You see a reactive generation that is solid on liberty, survival, and honor. You see a civic generation that focuses on community, values, and technology. Historically, whether it was a radio or TV, this was the generation that honed in on it. And then you have an adaptive generation, pluralistic expertise and due process. Now, the two that always conflict, we didn't have names for them before, but these are the two that always conflict. For one thing, it's parent-child. So the idealists have civics as their children, more or less, and the reverse is also true. And if you notice, the other two generations, adaptive and reactive, are not out there waving a vision flag. They're adapting or reacting to what's already going on. So the clashes are always between these two. So the idealists born after a crisis period grew up in a glow of success, can mature into narcissistic adults who challenge the authority of their parents, the civics, and midlife can become moralistic and values obsessed. As elders may lead society into a new crisis period, including war over their principles. They are activists and preachers. That was written in the 1980s, looking at 5 centuries of these kinds of movements. So those, of course, are boomers. Ooh, this hurts, I know. Okay, then we have the reactive generation, the ones focused on liberty, survival, and honor. We have several of those people in this room. And they grow up in the shadow of the idealists. By the way, these people are right now, this generation right now, as the employers say, are the best employees. I think it's because they had to manage us boomers. That's what happened. They traverse a time of great social and spiritual change. As young adults, they can feel alienated. They mellow into pragmatic midlife leaders during a crisis period, and they age into tough elders after the crisis. And those, of course, Gen X. We have some here. I see you. I know you. Okay, and then the next generation comes of age during a time of crisis and resolves it, defining their entire lives. Often born after the spiritual awakening, they come of age during a time of national divisiveness and chauvinism, written in the 80s. Become society's powerful civic leaders, build new institutions, promote social order and productive activity. As elders, confront politically by idealist generation. And those people are, of course, millennials, but also the greatest. So the greatest generation was the one were the parents of boomers, actually. So you had the greatest generation, and that also was the same generational archetype. So then we have the last one, grow up during historical crisis, such as war, overprotected by adults and preoccupied by the crisis. They come of age as sensitive young adults. They grow old as empathetic, but cautious leaders. And that would be Gen Z and builders. And that when you look at, I talked before about Joe Biden and Donald Trump being the same era they are, but Joe Biden's at the end of the builder generation. He tends more towards that generation. Donald Trump is at the beginning of the boomer generation, and he tends more towards that generation. All right, so who names, this is Kelly's, last week, people were asking me questions. This Kelly's questions was, who names generations and how? And so the answer today is anyone and everyone. After the initial names that Strauss and Howe developed, now it's usually marketers racing to be first to create and define a presumed customer. And they're often sound bites based on a single point in time. So silent generation, the reason it was called the silent generation was because they stayed silent during Joe McCarthy's infamous Red Scare hearings. But Archie Bunker was in the silent generation, okay? So it's not exactly a real good description here. All right, so almost everything on the internet today, if you click on generations, almost everything's clickbait. So be careful with it. Go back to the research on it. All right, the generations alive today, here you go. So you've got the civic generations in green. They're going to be in green throughout this. That's the greatest, and the millennials, I'll have their ages displayed on other slides too, so you don't have to do the math. And remember, that's not finite, okay? It's, all right. And then the adaptive generations, builders and Gen Z, idealists, boomers, and a theoretical Gen Alpha. And then we have Gen X. And this is a little more about that. So the people who are on either end of those, either the beginning or the end of a generation, are able to speak to both generations very well. And you'll see a lot of examples of that. And if you're in the workplace, there is a record 5 generations in the workplace today. The average has always been 3. I mean, that's incredible to try and handle in terms of all those different reactions to what's been going on. If you're in a family, in my family, we have 7 generations now. And so the holidays can get real interesting. And you want to think ahead to that because other people don't have our understanding of what we do or what's expected during the holidays. So one of the questions I also got was, does Generation Alpha actually exist? Some people, 2 marketers came up with it as starting in 2012. I'm not there. It may be around now, but I don't get that it started then for a couple of reasons. One is that the Alpha generation will be the new idealists, the new boomers. And we know that from that history, that they're born after a crisis period. They grow up in a glow of economic success. Any millennials here want to speak to that? And they grow up as indulged children because of that economic success. I'm not seeing we've turned that corner for them yet. Also, if we started them in 2012, it'd mean that we had very few Gen Zs, and I'm not there either. Gen Z's typical generation is 21 years. So, one of the fun things about doing speeches is that you can put Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, and Donald Trump next to each other on the same page and have them smiling. So here we go. So those are your builders. And these are the more prominent, shows prominent politicians and movers and shakers. And then you have the boomers. And if you remember when we talked about this before, we said that boomers, the idealists, often start wars. And if you look at the 3 on the left there, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran wars, Putin, we know about him, and President Xi of China and Taiwan. So kind of roll that into your thinking about all of it. And President-elect Trump, of course, is quite famous for saying there were no wars on his watch, and he wasn't in the military. So we'll see how that plays out in his presidency. And then you've got Gen X. And one of the most interesting ones on here for me is the millennials. That is a really different crew. So you've got J.D. Vance, you've got Kim Jong-un from North Korea, you got Pete Buttigieg, just to kind of throw it out there and mix it up. And we've got Mark Zuckerberg, and nobody's really quite sure where he is on most things yet. I bet we'll find out. If you look at which of those are bridgers, there they are. Those are the ones born at the beginning or in the end. Remember I said they're often leaders? Okay, here's the US population by generation. And so you've got boomers up there at 21%. And think about this, in 2020, 1 out of 3 Americans was a boomer. Now it's a fall from the top of the Empire State Building from 1 out of 3 to 1 out of 5. It has not been easy for us. So this is, when I'm feeling particularly generous, I think about Dan trying to run a community full of very successful boomers who are no longer having to go to work 5-6 days a week and run things. There's so much that we feel we can run. Just ask us anytime, Dan. Right, Kelly? We know how to run this. All right, now, the thing you got to consider is that that's not the growing side of this pie chart. The growing side of it is this side. So alpha, whenever it started, they may be babies. I've got a 7 or 8 month old nephew, grandnephew, great grand, something like that. And he probably is going to be an alpha. Gen Z is still growing. Millennials are still growing. So that side of the pie chart is taking over. I want to keep that in mind. So now when you look at the characteristics of these generations, once you look at it as a flow chart, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. So if you look at general characteristics of the 5 generations, let's just cover 5. So you've got builders are loyal, dependable, and tactful. Remember, that's the generation that Joe Biden generally is. You've got boomers, optimistic, competitive, and workaholic. And you've got flexible, Gen X, flexible, informal, and skeptical. Millennials, civic, open-minded, and team. Look at it going from individualistic back towards team, heading into another turning where working together becomes a critical force. Worldview and values. Builders came up during social wartime controls. We had extensively controlled society because of the war. Now, boomers hit that and went, this isn't going to work. And we took it on as our job to break down structures. We did a really good job of that. And we're still really kind of riveted on that, for better and for worse. Then you get to Gen X. They lived, because we broke down a lot of structures, they lived in a loosening social controls environment. They were guarded by their parents more because of it. And it was economic insecurity, so more guarding. You get to the millennials, there's social controls are gone. So of course the parents are hovering over them like crazy, because the same neighborhood mind that would have taken care of Uncle Bernard in the neighborhood is now all over the place, and nobody's taking care of Uncle Bernard. So we led through that. We boomers led through getting rid of the institutions. Now we've got Gen Z that the polls are saying want more government involvement in our lives. The very opposite of what most of us default to. So then there's music. You see this list down at the bottom left? I have this stuff on all of those. It goes on forever, but I kind of like music. We'll talk about that and then we'll quit. So music, Builder Generation, jazz, Glenn Miller, Frank Sinatra, Pat Boone. Boomers, in 5 years, we went from Pat Boone to Elvis. I want you to think what your parents thought about that. And whatever it is, that's what you think about rap. Okay? Right. So you can go through this all the time. Now, here we go. We'll talk about those two generations, but first, we have rare footage of boomers going to school. So I said before that the two generations that clash are always the idealist and the civic. So you've got boomers age about 60 to 78, millennials aged about 16 to 40. And here you see some big differences. So boomers, post-World War II, formative years, highly structured society. Millennials, formative years, few societal boundaries because we got rid of them. So boomers, nature versus nurture, and I can't tell you what a huge role, I mean, I was originally in healthcare, still am, I guess. And I can't tell you what a huge role this played in things like adoptions. We believed that nurture could overcome nature. And one of the reasons we believed that was no functional MRI had existed then. Functional MRI, where you could see function at the same time, didn't show up until the late 90s. And it's only been in health centers like ours, big ones, for about 10, 15 years. That's when you can see the brain actually functioning. We didn't know anything about the brain then. We don't know very much now, by the way, but we didn't know anything then. And that's a huge difference in way of learning about how people interact between boomers and millennials, for instance. We got to go to the library. All of you, I'm sure, were really excited when you get to go to the library and pour through the cards. Wasn't that fun? So all they do is turn on the computer. So they've got instantly available knowledge. Interestingly enough, only 24% of boomers graduated from college or got a higher degree. And probably some of the most educated ones are in this room and at Trilogies nationally. 39%, almost 40% of millennials have a college degree or higher, and at a 2,300% higher cost than in the 70s. Now, the good news is that their income increased 370%. Okay, so it's a little off, and that's one of the problems. You know, all the talk we've heard over the past couple of years about taking care of kids' college debt, that's what this actually was about. It'd be nice if they could have told us. All right, so we grew up with better living through chemistry, yeah? And millennials grew up with green, organic, whole foods, the whole thing. We had an 80% white experience. The millennials have only a 55% white experience, very much a multicultural experience. It's a very different default thinking process. Personal growth, boomers, anti-government, question everything. And millennials, tolerance, national ethos, national spirit, justice, learn everything. Boomers, 83% say religion is important, whether or not they go to church. And it's only 69%, but I bet you're surprised 69% of millennials say that religion is important. So boomers, 53% lean right, millennials, 55% leave left. Interestingly, not moving. One of the things that Churchill or somebody, they're not sure who, said that as you age, you get more conservative. Millennials are not moving. They're defying that age rule. Education, work, for boomers, it was individual, very much win-lose, and very much live to work. I'm one of those. Ask my husband. This is my very patient husband in the green shirt. So boomers live to work, millennials work to live. And that's been a huge conflict for people to understand. And you know what? I think they're right. When I've had a lot of doctors say to me that young doctors don't work as hard. They want to go home at 5 or 6. And my reply on 3 continents has been, they actually just want to have one wife. And that kind of quiets that conversation down quite a bit. But I've seen it, I understand. And I think that there's something to be said for working to live. Organizational loyalty, boomers, but many feel betrayed. There are probably people in this room who were betrayed by their organizations. Whether it was pensions being dropped, whether it was getting fired, there are people probably in this room that have experienced that. Well, the kids watched that happen. And so that same organizational loyalty is not there because of that. And millennials basically kind of assume 3 years and move up and on to a different entrepreneurial thought process. Boomers own 70% of US disposable income. That is an all-time record. There has never been a generation that owned that much of disposable income. They are 47 times wealthier than millennials. That's also a record. Yes, millennials will have more money as they get older, but we've never had that much disparity between the two. Millennials are the most economically threatened generation. Gen Z may overdo that. And their income is 20% less than boomers at the same age, wage adjusted. Okay, then we have he who dies with the most toys wins, multiple cars. Oh man, my husband can tell you, I clung to my car forever here in Trilogy as it sat in the garage collecting dust. So multiple cars because it represented individualism and autonomy. And millennials don't have the money, so they're into no ownership, none, experiences more than things, and a sharing economy, scooters, you name it. So a couple more here. Boomers, 57% of women were in the workforce and hit multiple glass ceilings. And I bet there's some stories in here about that. I have several. Also badly behaved people. 74% of millennial women are in the workforce, and they assume equity. They don't always get it, but they assume it. Big difference from glass ceiling to that. And that's a default thinking that plays out every day. A boomer's career, visibility, ladder in a corner office. Millennials, purpose in life. Flexible, mobile, collaborative, next job. And if we go down to the bottom, boomers are the most sedentary in the workforce. Yes. Women, we were pre-Title IX. I mean, I can't tell you how much effort I put in to finding an excuse not to wear that terrible gym outfit and go to the gym. So on the other hand, now you've got millennials that are post-Title IX competing in everything and doing beautifully at it. Neither the men or the women expect to sit in a little cubby all day and pour over their computer like the rest of us did. So some pretty big thinking and differences. And at this point in the game, unfortunately, I started to ask myself what causes the turnings. And then I got in way too deep. And I'll try to give you the overview on this. There's an author by the name of Peter Turchin. This is not overnight easy reading. But Peter Turchin has something called cycles, which actually parallel turnings quite nicely. And his belief after his research is that it's intolerable wealth gaps that cause his equivalent of the fourth turning of the crisis. And by way of background, our wealth gap was huge after World War II, as was the debt, national debt. It was 106% of GDP then, because we'd just gone through the Great Depression and we went into a war that we weren't prepared to go into and didn't want to go into. So we had a huge national debt. And there was a reset after World War II on that. Both the debt in particular, and then the wealth gap got reset. The two go hand in hand. So the debt increased to 31% of GDP in the 70s. And then starting in the 90s, we got record rapid increase in both of those. So the GDP today is about 123, the debt is about 123% of GDP, for instance. Turchin says that the inevitable result of that disparity is massive civic destabilization. And he says what you get is elite overproduction. And by elites, he means what some people are starting to call the oligarchs here. And what he says is they start competing with each other for power. And when I say that, if you don't start thinking some names, you're not paying attention. Okay? So you get competition for power. And as Turchin says, every cycle, the problem is we have more formidable weapons and greater propensity to use them. So here's today's wealth gap. So that starts, you got it starting back here in the 1990s. And you can see what it looked like for the top 0.1%, that upper blue line, the 1%, which is the other blue line, the 90 to 99%, which is the yellow, the 50 to 90%, we called that the middle class. And you can see where the bottom 50% was and where it is now. It's a pretty good gap. And just to give you a sense of the annual income, here you go. In the top 0.1% in the United States in Q3 of last year, the average annual income was $1.5 billion. And there was a 47% increase in that from 2019 to 2023. And in fact, Elon Musk alone had a 750% increase in 2021. So now, Stan, if you're a boomer, you're thinking, how do I get there? If you're a millennial, you go, how do I get that? So little difference in thinking here. One of the things that I found really amazing is that the traditional middle class, the 50 and 90%, we've always called the middle class, that middle class, their annual average income right now is $51,000. The lower class, it's $46,000. Not a lot of difference there. And if you go from the 50th, 90th percentile, 51,000, to the 90th to 99th, it goes from 51,000 to 7 million. So this is a huge generational issue, and it's not going away real quick. And we get to figure this out. So here's some records for you. The US population, boomers are now about 21%, and we have 52% of US wealth. That's a record. No generation has ever had that much wealth before. 55 plus, which includes boomers. We are 30% of the US population, 73% of the wealth. Also a record. And under 55, 70% of the population's under 55, and they have 27% of the wealth. So when you look at election results for youths, what you find is what you see on the right, which is the economic and good jobs. That's different than just jobs, but good jobs where they can support a family, buy a house. That is their main concern by far over everything else. Okay, young generations believe the American dream may be beyond reach. And I hear that every day. I heard it last week. I hear it all the time. There's a sense that things have gotten beyond their reach. And both conservative and liberal youth, there are both, believe government should take a much more active leadership role in dealing with this. William Ury, another author, so it can be a hard read, says we're living in a paradox, a time of tremendous opportunity in a wave of destructive conflict that's polarizing every facet of our lives. So bottom line about our fourth turning. So it's far from over. If you look around, particularly if you read any headlines, you don't really see a sense of resolution. Laugh, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things you want to keep in mind is that, particularly if your kids don't, if your kids are millennials, if you've got Gen Z or Gen Z kids in the family, keep in mind that within Trilogy, we live in a generational bubble that's not shared with 70% of the population. And so it's really important to look outside who we are, whether you do that in news media or if you do it with your family. Really think about where they are. The concerns of those younger generations are very real. We have not addressed them as a nation. And history says that's a very big mistake. So now how this all ends is up to us. The good news is we've been here before and we got through it then too. I'm a fan of this saying of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, for those of you that might not be intimately familiar, i.e. younger, was the Prime Minister of the UK during World War II. And Winston Churchill said, you can trust the Americans to do the right thing after they try everything else. I think he's got a point. So the right thing right now for us. First of all, there's so much to learn from each generation if we look at it as the possibility of doing that. So the greatest generation can teach a lot about personal responsibility, humility, loyalty to family and community, financial prudence, resilience in the face of hardship, and contributing to something larger than oneself. You spend 10 minutes with my uncle and you will see what the greatest generation's like. It's just like that. That's him. So the builder generation, that's the generation after that. So caution, planning, thinking ahead, scenario development, giving back, listening to understand, not to respond or react, and empathy. Boomers, these are the things we're really good at. Compartmentalization, confidence, independent thinking, self-reliance. We can show anybody how to interview, engage, and pitch something. We are very good at that. And we know how to compete. We're very good at competing. Gen X, best employees, I mentioned that. Digital reskilling, they had to make that leap. They can help those of us that haven't made it completely. Efficiency, economic adaptation, seeking and using mentoring, execution of plans, and building talent. Millennials, great at teamwork. Anytime, if you want them to act independently, they'll have a lot more fun and to get more done if they're part of a team. Workplace development, family development during the holidays, put them as a team. Advantage of, they taught us the advantage of constant feedback versus infrequent feedback. I mean, what good does it do to have feedback at the end of a year rather than having it on an ongoing basis? Yes, we have a lot of memes about that, but the truth is, if things are going south, wouldn't you rather know so you could fix it than wait until that terrible evaluation? Besides, what good are evaluations anyway? A lot of boomers lost their job about 3 months after a stellar evaluation. So you think about, there's some perspective here that makes sense. Gen Z, truth-telling, anxiety, but confidence and self-guidance once they have some roadmaps. Entrepreneurialism, online privacy, really good at that. Call up a Gen Z for that. Relationship, passion, and digital skills. 10 values that matter across generations. Respect and involvement. Everybody wants this. Respect and involvement, recognition and appreciation, choice and control of your own destiny, feeling safe and secure, freedom to discuss values, concerns, and beliefs without being judged. Holiday alert. Being asked for help. Ask people for help. They love it. And helping people. People love that. Opportunities for learning, teaching, mentoring, and being taught and mentored. The ability to support yourself and support a family. A sense of contributing to a greater societal purpose rather than something that's, let's make this much money this year. Something that contributes to society's well-being. And being trusted, personal integrity. Here's some survival tips. I'm getting there.
I'm always.
Pardon?
Number 5 has been in the ditch for the last 4 years.
Let's see. I promised everybody I wouldn't start a riot. Well, we haven't been real receptive. Let me put it that way. Okay. So suspend judgment, survival tips, suspend judgment, blame, take a breath, don't react, suspend, if you're a boomer like me, suspend the need to be right. This is not easy. We practice this. Somebody in my house practices this. It may not work, but I try. Okay, open up to different ideas and concerns. Look for the shared humanity beyond hair, clothes, piercings, and tattoos. Be comfortable with discomfort. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. That's where growth occurs. Use self-deprecating or humorous storytelling to level the generational competition field. That's often best after a relaxed dinner. And my own favorite, people have to be in the right mood. You got to be prepared for shocks. My own favorite is to ask everybody in the room what they set on fire. You will, as a parent, you will hear stories you never knew happened. And it is such a great leveling field because everybody in this room, well, I find it's about 9 out of 10 men and more like about 3 out of 5 women. Everybody in this room probably set something on fire that was almost a tragedy. So ask that question, it's kind of fun. A little alcohol beforehand helps. So help generations get to know each other, pair up family members from different generations for tasks, get people out of the house, acknowledge different interests, let go of it. And consider printing a together time schedule and otherwise telling them to go, have fun, do other things. Respect different communication styles, don't sigh when the phones come out, try to re-engage them. Make specific, particularly if you're a woman, at least I think it's particularly if you're a woman, make specific requests for help. Don't assume they will chip in or they will know when you want them to chip in. And schedule handoffs and break times. I'd say my husband and I could not live through the invasion of the alpha generation without saying, you have him Thursday morning, I will be at the library. So schedule that. It's a great way. We're not 35 anymore. Okay, living and loving through all of it, spot our own unconscious defaults, recognize and actively help lower anxiety and blame, be patient and comfortable with discomfort, focus on similarities, not differences, keep moving from me to we, lean on traditions, roots, values, community, and faith, what you share in common. Seek the positive, resist curmudgeoning. Resist it. Our parents curmudgeoned when we were millennials age, resist it. Just don't go there. Lift up younger generations. It's their future, not ours. And remember, how this ends is up to us, not somebody else in DC. We get to decide this. So I have some final tips for surviving the holidays. I also, because of my background, did a lot of research on statistically significant differences in responses of the genders. Statistically significant, you remember, means that more likely to be because of this than not. And everything I'm going to show you is at least 95% confidence level, meaning that 5 out of 100 times it's going to be wrong, and 95 out of 100 is probably going to be right. So here you go. So we got females and males. Shapes, women prefer curved circles and ovals. Men prefer straight lines, angles, rectangles, and squares. I can't tell you how I fought my marketing people on that. Information, women prefer details. In fact, if you live through this without going to sleep, this is what you're a woman probably. So males want simple, factual, uncluttered, minimal feature information, reaction to detail, TMI. Conversational format, I love this one. Women prefer face-to-face, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes. And eye-to-eye contact, dialogue. We can make friends doing face-to-face. We can make friends in the bathroom, okay? And interruptions are fine with women. Now, men, they want to be side to side looking at something, not eye contact. Bars were made for men. The TV's up there. You got people beside you. You don't have to do eye-to-eye contact. Unfortunately, I grew up in a male-dominated profession, and so now I love bars too. But generally, I sit like this at the back. All right, so if you want to get people's attention, with women of all ages, any baby, any cute baby, doesn't matter which one. It results in a progesterone release, which is the feel-good hormone. With men, it's women, sports, cars, and beer. And sometime when I've got more time, I'll tell you a good story than my own experience with that. All right, situational complexities, they drive men crazy. Women are interested in them. Noise, this is really important for holidays. Women are very sensitive to noise overall, have a much lower noise tolerance than men do. Men have a very high tolerance because you just tune it out. You make us crazy when you do that, but that's what you do. And except a crying baby, there's a higher incidence of crying babies with men who abuse their children. And there's a lot of sort of theories about that, one of which is if they can't stop the baby crying, the enemy knows where you are. Don't know, but this is a true thing. It's statistically significant. Smell. Women have a much stronger sense of smell. We have 50% more olfactory neurons. That's very much more so during pregnancy. And men, no, he really cannot smell that. Honest. Now we get to one of our favorites, right, Kelly? Kelly, help me with this one. So here we go. This is called Find the Butter. This will play out during the holidays, guaranteed. So find the butter. Take your average man. This is what he does when he looks to find the butter. Now he does it in hyper speed, but he sees in slices like that. And by about the 30th slice, tiny slice, his brain is very tired of that. And so he can't find it. And Paul will tell you, move the vacuum 4 feet in the same closet and it can't be found. Okay, that is men's vision. This is not them being, whatever. That's their vision. Women, average woman. She sees that she has peripheral vision, so she sees the butter immediately, no problem. And at our house, we kind of have rules about this, right, Paul? There's a certain amount of time where he will say, I can't find it, and then he calls me and we just go on with our lives. Now, one thing men are really good at that women aren't is they can follow the mouse. And I think that's the reason, they always know where the mouse went. And I think that's the reason women are like this about mice is we can't see where it went, because our vision doesn't follow fast-moving objects as quickly. So that's it. That's Find the Butter. On to the holidays. We've still got a couple minutes for questions. I promised Liz I'd be done by 1:45. Oh, well. Questions?
The schedule said you're going to 5:45.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, we got plenty of.
Oh,
stuff.
good. You'll enjoy that. Go get a drink.
I think Miss Anita has a question.
Is it true then that people that are kind of on the border between those generations kind of have a foot in one?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Feels like that.
Yeah, it is. And you can see when you look at the archetypes, the personas, you can see where they're mostly, I think Joe Biden is really typical Bridger, who's a builder. His default is to the builder. You do things behind, don't tell everybody what you're doing, don't brag about it. He goes in that direction. Trump is very much a boomer, even though they're both, they're 3 years apart, folks. This is not two continents. And he's very much a winner and all of those things. So you can really see the difference, but he can talk very well to builders, and Biden talked very well to boomers because they understand both. Yeah. I can't figure out if you're depressed or you have fun. You could talk about more male-female stuff.
I have a question.
Oh, dear.
I'm her sister. So I see all the time on like Nextdoor app and stuff, people who I know are boomers and millennials are going, the younger generation, nobody wants to work. They're lazy, and I just keep thinking, I think there are different values going on, but what is your comment about that?
Oh, that's very classically the boomer live to work and the millennials work to live. That's exactly what that is. So it's, I said before, you want one wife or you want six, how many do you want? And, I live to work. I'm still doing it, for crying out loud. I love it. But on the other hand, what you're dealing with, we got other questions, I bet, do we?
I just wanted to make sure the mic could pick you up.
Thank you. But what we're dealing with is a very different philosophy about what's important in my life. And both of them are fine. Boomers did just fine. You're all here, right? Gen X is here. I don't think I mentioned, by the way, that there's a fall off in Gen X between age 50 and 55, where the economy is, for them, is much more like millennials. Above 55, it's the boomer economy. And the difference was the 2008 recession, whether or not your pension got hit, whether or not you took a hit in your job. That's the difference between the two. There's a very different fall off. But anyway, that's what it is. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else? We got anything
There's
else?
gotta be some
Well,
questions.
nobody with questions. It's because I talk fast. It's kind of fun though, don't you?
Yeah.
So will Kelly left, so.
Jean, do you have a question, Jean?
I'm just gonna make a quick comment.
Yeah.
To, uh,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm supposed to do that all the time, and I still sometimes I go,
Yeah.
So I think that's a big factor.
I thought for a minute you were gonna say you'd rent yours out.
That's a great idea.
Is that something else? I see another hand.
So Kelly left the room, so will he be able to buy a house and move out of what he said his cardboard box? Just kidding, he doesn't live in a cardboard box.
That kind of goes back to that wealth gap. If we don't handle it, they don't have the capability. I will say that millennials, this is the more bad news for us. Millennials are starting to inherit from us. And so they are headed for, some of them, depending on how affluent their parents were, are headed for an increase in their income pretty quickly. There's hope there,
Awesome.
depending on how your parents did.
And just to be clear, you said that Gen X is the fast workers? Is that what you said?
Employers,
Em-
employ-
oh, okay.
employers feel that people like Liz are the best employees. We think so too. It's a,
Do you have a question?
yeah. Like, is there intersectional? Health and equity, race. Yeah, there's all kinds of them. And you would be sound asleep if I'd covered half of it. But if I understand your question, it's a lot of the time what I say is that we boomers think we created a boom economy. That's not right. The boom economy created us, how we are as boomers. We take full credit for it, of course, but that's not the way it works. Because there was a huge wealth and debt reset after World War II. That is the reason that the boomers were able to be so successful, because we weren't dealing with many of the same issues we're dealing with today. So yeah, if your question was, does the economy of the turning help create the generation? Absolutely. Is that what you were asking? Close. Yeah, and as I said before, different cultures experience the turnings very differently. So the example I had between Rosie the Riveter and the 688 and what those women experienced after the war is very different. So yeah.
And that's
What you were thinking?
question
Yeah,
about, how you see, the other influences that are there.
yeah. It's not the sole factor though. Yeah. It's very different culturally. I would expect that Asian Americans would have had a different experience if they grew up in a traditional Asian American family during that time. And you look at the war internment, for instance. So there are many cultural experiences, but overall, it's a sort of a shared society mood. And so it isn't just your family or your culture, it's everybody else that you're hanging with at that time. Good question. There's a lot on that. Is the bar? Yeah, if you send my emails, so it's info, well, first of all, you can email me on Trilogy, right? Yeah.
I'll be happy to send it to everyone who registered today.
Good,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, you're welcome. No, it's fun, I love it. Thank you for being interested. Sorry, what?
Said it might help me navigate the holidays if I could show the chart to my.
Before we eat today, I want to show you a quick calendar. They would be like, they would be intrigued. They'd be like, okay, what's going on?
PowerPoint. Oh, they'd love that. Written by a woman, so there's a lot of words.
Exactly.
We go back, Cindy and I go back and forth all the time. Do you put like 6 words and talk, or in my case, do you put 100 words and read them all? It's like 2 different generations on this.
That's awesome.
All right. Anything else? Dan, is the bar open?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Great place.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Marianne. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. You were great.
You're really good at things. Thank you.
Awesome. But yes, the bar is open.